Welcome back to the show, everyone. As you can see, Scott Ritter is joining me to break down the latest developments in geopolitics, where we begin with the 10th straight night of U.S. strikes on Iran and Iranian retaliation. Iran has maintained a very steady and very impactful retaliation to U.S. strikes along its southern coast. It has hit an Amazon data hub, according to the IRGC. It has taken out several Patriot batteries and a Patriot missile defense system, as well as in Jordan at the Mawafik air base in Azraq. It has taken what they say is F-15 fighter jet and another radar system as well. A big report is that, according to CBS, anonymous U.S. officials are saying that now nearly 100 U.S. service members stationed on these military bases have been injured this month, but more importantly, since July 7th. All of this has come in less than 2 weeks' time. And Donald Trump, regardless of the consequences of this war, Donald Trump is saying that he is preparing to strike Pickaxe Mountain, as he received questions from the media that Iran may be hiding its subterfuges here for its nuclear program. And he says the fueling tankers that we see, Scott, amassing around Israel and Jordan could be used for these purposes. Scott, I want to kick it to you. What do you make of these developments? Trump also is blaming Jordan for the air defense mishaps that have occurred that took the lives, unfortunately, of 3 U.S. service members, as well as all of this hardware. What's your reaction to the latest developments in this war?
Well, I think you have to learn to read between the lines here. First of all, let's just be honest. The amount of American casualties is also tragic for those who have died, their families, and for those who have injured. Some of these injuries are very serious, I understand. It's actually an extremely low rate of casualties given the nature of the war that we're fighting. High profile, high stakes conflict. These are as negligible casualties as they are. So I don't lose any sleep over, it's not as though this is a blood bath for American military. It's not, which points to a couple of things. One, the Iranians are not seeking to kill Americans. The Iranians are going after capabilities as opposed to going after people. And this is where the real harm is being done, because Iran is degrading our air defense, making the sustainability of this conflict impossible from the American perspective. We're going to run out of ammunition and run out of the ability to defend ourselves long before the Iranians run out of missiles. We need to also reflect on the fact that a significant proportion of the weapons being used to strike Iran today are ground-based weapons. The HIMARS firing the standard HIMARS rocket, or firing the ATACMS missile. I think there's some indication that might be firing an advanced long-range missile as well from this system. But this just underscores the reality that American strike power has to be augmented by ground-launched. American air launch strike capacity has to be augmented by ground launch, because we don't have enough weapons. And I believe the reports coming out from sources in the Pentagon, et cetera, that say we're running out of ammunition, both in terms of their ability to strike Iran and defend, which again reinforces the point that the Iranians are not losing here. The fact that the Iranians continue to be able to launch ballistic missiles in quantities, and the fact that they're hitting the targets they're aiming at, just again reinforces the point that Iran is not seeing its capabilities degraded. The United States, on the other hand, is seeing its capabilities degraded. And even if Donald Trump chooses to escalate, all that will do is deplete the American arsenal even quicker. So then we compound all this with the fact that what this war is really about, oil, just became a major factor. Iran has not only shut down the Strait of Hormuz, but now the Houthi in Yemen have blockaded Saudi Arabia, in effect closing the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And Saudi Arabia had deflected 70% of its oil production away from the Strait of Hormuz to the port of Yanbu and through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now Saudi Arabia is 100% locked off. They might be able to redivert some tankers through to the Suez Canal, but that makes the sustainability of that routing questionable because it's just too expensive. So we're seeing major developments in this war, and the one thing that's clear is that Iran is not losing and the United States is not winning. And if you check that trajectory on both lines, it signals a strategic American defeat.
Yeah, no, great point, Scott. Now, here is exactly what you're talking about. There's a Washington Post report. This is from the Times of Israel, citing it, saying that while the U.S. is making plans for a potential expansion of military operations, it is limited by low munitions stockpile. The U.S. is planning for wider war, but according to this, it will be hamstrung by its insufficient stockpiles of air defense and long-range missiles, also limited in its ability to bring more troops to the fight because of battle damage incurred by Iran. That's a pretty big report. And now I wanted to show you, Scott, this report by CBS. I found it to be fascinating in terms of the reaction to what has happened in Jordan. Here we go.
The loss of the first U.S. soldiers to die in combat in months here in Jordan has raised serious questions, starting with why Jordan, why now, and how did it happen? Analysts point to a few different factors. First of all, Jordan doesn't have the kind of robust air defenses that you would see in more established U.S. military bases, like where the Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain or in Kuwait. And those countries also have a robust air defense. Jordan doesn't have anything near that. Secondly, Jordan really doesn't have the kind of military to launch any kind of retaliatory strikes against Iran. In fact, it's the last thing they want to do is to try to face Iran in their own conflict. Thirdly, yes, U.S. forces are dispersed through here. And although we've talked about the loss of the U.S. soldiers to have been killed in missile strikes, dozens more have been wounded in multiple strikes over the course of the past few days. So while Jordan has largely managed to avoid bearing the full brunt of Iranian attacks, that all changed a few days ago. And something has happened to either cripple America's early warning system to show when missiles are coming in, or to find some way to stop these missiles or projectiles or drones from actually doing any damage. The Iranians have seen that Achilles heel, and they're exploiting it.
Scott, what is that thing that has happened? I found that a very interesting. Something has happened which has made it difficult for Jordan to use its U.S. hardware to stop these missiles and drones. What is that something?
Well, first of all, we just have to point out the absurdity of the report. I'm not denigrating the conclusions, but the fact base is just flawed. The United States has deployed some of its most advanced anti-air, anti-missile defense capabilities to Jordan. The THAAD missile batteries, the Patriot PAC-3. These are the premier anti-missile units, and the United States has deployed them into Jordan. So I just don't know what he's talking about to imply that Jordan is defenseless. But the reality is this makes this report even more damning to the United States, because even though we have deployed the best resources possible to defend American forces that are operating out of Jordanian soil, we're not able to successfully defend. Our weapon systems are not shooting down the missiles, the best weapon systems we have, by the way. Donald Trump may be talking about the failure of a Jordanian unit, but that's just part of an integrated air defense system, similar to what we do with Israel, where you tie in host nation air defense, and maybe the Iranians exploited that gap. But what's happening here is the Iranians have better weapons than we do, and the Iranians have also have a better approach to conflict than we do. They've done a thorough assessment of how we fight, what makes our systems work, and they've been, sending missiles at the United States bases in the region now for some time. And they've effectively destroyed much of the early warning capacity of the United States. So we're not getting the initial launch notifications, the accuracy, and it gives us reduced time to react. But at the end of the day, that's just making excuses for the sad truth, if you're an American. Our weapons aren't capable of stopping the Iranian weapons. That's what happened. the Iranian weapons are superior to American weapons, and the United States has defense against the weapon systems that Iran is, being brought to bear. That doesn't mean Iran's not doing damage. Of course, they're doing damage, but the point is, the report seems to imply that, if we were able to reconstitute the systems that have been systemically destroyed by Iran, we would somehow magically be able to assert our dominance on the battlefield. The furthest thing from the truth. We lack the technological capacity to handle the Iranian ballistic missile threat, period, full stop. And they're going to continue to dissect American defenses and bombard American facilities. And the potential for additional American casualties, even a great number of American casualties, is quite real.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Scott, now I wanted to ask you about there's been a lot made of Pickaxe Mountain in recent days. And I'll just play what Donald Trump said very briefly about this. He's been asked about this several times, about this location, nuclear program of Iran, subterfuges, etc., having been moved here. Here's that question and answer.
Haley Wool, Scripps News. Thank you for the question. Do you believe that Iran has moved nuclear centrifuges into Pickaxe Mountain? When you say we're not done yet, what is left to finish?
Well, I think that they may have. We don't have it on record. All we do is read the fake news. We see the news is so wrong so many times. So maybe this one they have right, but it's okay. It doesn't mean anything unless they have the material. You're talking about the centrifuges. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything unless they have the material. They don't have. We follow the material. That's where the action is, and we'll be hitting that area probably pretty soon. And there's not a thing they can do about it.
So, Scott, hitting that area very soon. What does that even mean? Maybe you can help the audience understand Pickaxe Mountain and there's B-1 bombers, I know, mobilizing around the Israeli-Jordan area. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, Pickaxe Mountain is a underground facility that is dug deep into the heart of a granite mountain, and I can't remember exactly how much granite is on the top, but there's not a weapon in the United States arsenal that can defeat Pickaxe Mountain in the conventional arsenal. There's no realistic nuclear weapon that can defeat it as well. If we were to employ, one of the heavier warheads from the Minuteman system or the Trident system, maybe we could partially collapse part of the Pickaxe system, but then that would be, thermonuclear war using strategic systems and inherently destabilizing. The B-1 is not a nuclear capable bomber. And so, the B-1 could be dropping, the GBU-57 massive, ordnance bomb. But that doesn't work. We know that. We dropped that on facilities during the first Iran war in June, and then later on when this conflict began in February, the Iranians has actually dug out a few of these bombs that didn't blow up, and they're aware of the totality of the capacity of this weapon, and I'm sure they've taken appropriate precautions. But this is just, again, par for the course for a president who, frankly speaking, doesn't know anything about military art, doesn't know anything about the weapon systems. He receives superficial briefings, and therefore he presents superficial, argumentation to a superficial American public.
Scott, what have you made of there's been a kind of diplomatic, there's a complete rupture between the U.S. and Iran, but the mediators, Qatar, Pakistan, they've been rushing in recent days, actually in the last 24 hours-ish, 24:36 or so, to try to get some kind of 10-day ceasefire. Both sides, the U.S. and Iran, have rejected this. What do you make of this rush, and what's compelling it? And why is it that the United States appears to be digging in and doubling down despite all of the consequences that it's having, and consequences that you said earlier could very well build up if this thing continues and pile up?
Yeah, I mean, to answer this question with a modicum of certainty, I'd have to be speaking to American policymakers to get the true answer to the questions. Danny, you're gonna have to do me a favor because it's late here, and
Right.
my brain just literally cleared. So
Yeah,
ask
well,
the
I want
question again. I have
to
the
sure.
answer in my head, but I need the question rephrased.
Sure, everyone should know that it's after midnight where Scott is, and so everyone should appreciate his effort by giving a like here. And so the question was, Scott, the diplomatic rush that's occurred from the mediators, Pakistan, Qatar. There's even said other Gulf countries have participated in this as well to try to gain some kind of 10-day ceasefire leading to maybe a 90-day ceasefire.
Right.
And Iran has rejected it, and so has Trump to you now.
Yeah, well, first of all, the credibility and the viability of the mediation efforts at risk, and so they're trying to reestablish, a forum that could lead to a negotiated settlement. They thought they had one through the memorandum of understanding and the negotiations that were used to achieve that. But this appears to be more of an initiative by the negotiators as opposed to either Iran or the United States asking these people to do things. Iran has the upper hand. That's what they believe, and Trump believes that he has yet to begun to fight, that there are more capabilities he can bring to bear. And so this Russian diplomacy isn't something that I believe is going to generate any real diplomatic outcome. It's not until Iran, the United States, or both, feel significant pain. It's pain which brought the United States to the negotiating table last time. Donald Trump has admitted the United States was running out of oil. J.D. Vance acknowledges that the MOU was just a fraud, that it was only there to buy time so we could get more oil. And the one thing they didn't talk about is so we could, generate additional weapons to replenish our stockpiles, to strip the Pacific bare, to strip Europe bare, to basically hamstring any effort to provide ballistic missile support to Ukraine. All of this was diverted to the region to deal with an Iranian missile threat, but it hasn't been able to deal with the Iranian missile threat. This is the reality. So we're not going to have a negotiated settlement just because the former mediators want one. It's going to require either the United States or Iran or both nations to reach the conclusion that they are not going to achieve what they want on the battlefield, and that for damage control or whatever, the only option, the only venue available to them is a diplomatic outcome. So in a way, it's good that these diplomats are flexing their diplomatic muscles so that they don't atrophy. But the race isn't going to be run now. The diplomatic race will be run when either Russia, either the United States or Iran, or both, decides that the need for peace is greater than the imperative for war.
Now, there is a troubling development that's been emerging, and of course, it resides a lot within the mainstream media. Is that there's a narrative going around about the U.S. war on Iran, as it is currently constituted, being increasingly a forever war. And this is a retired general who, let me actually just pull up his name here.
How much longer do you?
Rob
How much longer?
Spalding. I'm not familiar with him, but he had this comment to say about the low munitions and the issues with that, and whether he thinks this will be a problem for continuing the war in the immediate and long-term future.
How much longer do you expect this to go on? And do you think munitions should be a limitation at this point? What do you hear?
No, I don't think, the Pentagon has done a great job of restocking the munitions. I don't think that's an issue at all. But I do expect that we're going to be there a long time. Operation Northern Southern Watch went on for, almost 20 years, I think. So I think this is going to be something similar. We're going to have to stay there. Those guys aren't going to change their behavior. We have to adapt. And I think, we're going to have to get the Gulf states and those that rely on the oil coming from the Gulf states to help pay for this.
So that's the narrative going around, that this is going to go on for a long time. Stockpiles are not an issue, and ultimately it's similar to the Iraq situation. I think very different, but your thoughts on this, Scott?
Stockpiles are an issue. I mean, intellectually, you cannot support what he said based upon realities. Look, let's just deal with, just baseline math. We have weapons, we fire weapons. And if we run out of weapons, we can't fire weapons. And so while we're firing the weapons, we need to find new weapons to replace the weapons we're firing. Ideally, at a minimum, you want to replace them on a one-for-one basis. But because this is war and you can anticipate potential, you know, increases in rates of fire, et cetera, you want to produce more weapons than you expend. That's always a good thing, especially when you've taken the weapons out of other theaters of operation. It takes over 2 years to produce a single Patriot missile. Just people need to understand that over 2 years. Um, you know, we're expending. I think there was video that showed Bahrain firing 8 Patriots to intercept one target. But the bottom line is, you know, the replacement rate for Patriots is a little bit more than one missile a day. Um, we're expending dozens of missiles a day. Do people understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that we have an expenditure rate when compared to the replacement rate, which is totally skewed against replenishment of stockpiles, that we are going to rapidly run out of ammunition and we're going to have no capacity to replace those munitions. And so we'll have empty periods. There's nothing the general can say that can change this outcome. Even if we, as you know, we've done, the United States has, had Lockheed Martin and Raytheon let, new contracts for the accelerated production of the Patriot. But even if the contracts are initiated today, you're not getting a Patriot missile till 2 or 3 years down the road from this. This war is probably not going to be around in 2 or 3 years. And whatever, if there is a war, um, you know, the Ukrainians, won't have any air defense to protect themselves. So I think the general is 100% wrong on that. I think the military alone precludes this from being a long war. The United States will run out of ammunition, and that's the fact. The Iranians, on the other hand, appear to have their capabilities underground. They're showing no pressure to limit their strikes. In fact, the talk is that Iran is going to accelerate the missile strikes in order to, drive home, the psychologically the inevitability of an American defeat. So I think the general is just wrong across the board. I don't think anything he said is right. I don't think this war will last long because you can't have a war if you don't have the capacity to fight this war. Donald Trump early on was talking about a 3-week war, and it's probably because in the back of his brain, he remembers a briefing where someone said we run out of ammunition in 3 weeks and we need to accomplish everything during this time or, we're going to fail. And so, this is what we're looking at, 3 weeks. The Iranians aren't going to run out of ammunition in 3 weeks, and we're not going to do fatal harm to Iran in 3 weeks. I think this is just going to further deplete, Americans' military prowess. All in cause of a war that we haven't been able to articulate why it is we're fighting. We're trying to make up this notion that it's to save America and the world from an Iranian nuclear bomb, but it's a nuclear bomb Iran wasn't trying to produce, didn't want to produce. And the American side knows all this because they've seen the evidence. They're aware of the evidence, and so this is a case where the United States is manufacturing consent for a war against Iraq that we cannot win, and it's a war that will stop sooner rather than later because our strategic position will be so weakened, so fragile, so exposed that we will have no choice but to sue for peace.